Welcome back to the Big House, part 2. We've put the grout down. Now we're going to try and remove it. So, hopefully you've watched the other video of me applying the grout and explaining why we spread it all through the surface of the tile, but the idea is to fill in all the little pitting in the holes in the tile. That's a travertine tile, it's a natural stone, and in this case what it's doing is it's filling up the surface. Sometimes you can get ones that have been pre-filled, so they're resin bonded and machined back, but in this case they're the natural tile. In fact, let's just nip outside quickly, I think. Yeah, so here we go. So I got a few bits of when I was cutting out by here. So take that little slither, you can see all the holes in it. They run right the way through, so it's important when you lay the tiles, back butter them, so as to spread cement on the back of it. You can see that actually there's one that we did and then it broke as we were laying it, so you can see the tile cement spread across the back. There's the surface unfilled, so that gives you a bit more strength to the structure of the tile. Then we're grouting over the top, so we're filling all these little pittings, holes, etc. And what that will do then is add a bit more strength and a bit of colour to the tile. So let's get back in. It's a right mess now. That's a pack that I laid a couple of months ago when it's all washed up. I think I did a couple of videos on that as well. We'll try and get that on, but back in here now. So first things first, before you start, make sure you've got the right tooling. So in this case, I've got a wash boy there. You haven't got to use that, you can use a bucket, but I do find these sponges, like a sponge float, very, very useful. With the rollers then, just run it down, get all the water out, so you're not putting too much water in. It saves putting your hand in the dirty water all the time to rinse your sponge. The other thing I'm wearing today, which I don't usually wear to be honest, is gloves, and the reason for that is because I just laid a driveway the other week and I did it barehanded and in the cold, and my hands have gone a little bit chapped or chafed, whatever. So when the grout gets in there, it really dries your skin out. If you've got sensitive skin, it can be really bad. I'm usually quite good with it, but the last couple of weeks haven't been so great. Anyway, I've gone off on a tangent again. So we got our clean water. Make sure we start off with a clean bucket of water and a nice clean sponge. My brother, House Around the House, did a couple of videos on grouting years ago and got a bit of stick because he was using a car sponge. But this is deemed a grouting sponge, a standard one. And this one here is actually, I'm not sure that's a car sponge or another grouting sponge, but the car sponge tends to be more that shape. There's no issue using a car sponge whatsoever. The only downside of using a cheap car sponge, from my experience, is that sometimes bits of the foam might start to pull away, or the sponge after it's been used a while, and you can find little bits in the grout. Whereas the grout sponges, although they do deteriorate, they tend to be a bit harder wearing. That's the only difference in my opinion. So don't worry about what sponge you're using. As long as it's a new sponge, one of these is absolutely fine. I always keep a bucket of water, so when I'm grouting, I can clean the tools off as I go. And it's very important that every time you do a bit of grout, you wash everything up like you would in any wet trade really before starting over again. So get all the dried grout off your trowel, etc. So you can see I just had a wash up. Once the grout was done, clean everything up. A little bit of dirt on that from the cardboard, I think, but clean everything up, ready for the next go. So I grouted right the way through. I wouldn't usually put this much grout on in one hit because it can be a bit troublesome in getting it off. But what it is that I've put it on a little bit wetter just to help me spread it around and get it into the surface of the tile. It's something I recommend when you're tiling travertine. Grouting travertine, I should say, not tiling. So when there's a little bit I've done earlier, that bit I've sponged off already, but you can see it will leave like these sort of dust marks. Now, two ways you can go about it. You can get the water again and go over and over, but I always find that the grout dust, once you're that fine amount, it'll always dry up and show a bit of dust. So you've got two options in my opinion, other than using a sponge. You can get these they're actually a proper tiling pad. I think it's Victrex. There's a few different names on them, but they're obviously made by the same people because they're identical. Screwfix, Tops Tiles, a lot of the tile shops sell them now. And if you just go around it and work it in, you can see where that is spreading and not going. That's because it's still a little bit wet. Hasn't dried yet, but I'm going to spread that like this just to loosen it all up on the surface. Like that. And then the other way, if you don't use that, you could go direct on with a towel and then use a fairly clean towel. In this case, it's Mrs. Pouse's best towel, so she won't be too happy. But it's all I had on me. And then we'll buff that up, and you can see, you know, that's really now, you can see the difference in the surface on that one, say, to that one in the colour. So that's where I've gone over it with the wet the sponge first and cleaned it all up. But I'm not going to do any more of that for now. I'm going to crack back on with this because it's starting to go off. So one thing to always do is just run your finger through it. Now, at the moment, this grout is still a little bit wet. When it's that wet, we shouldn't really be dipping the sponge on it. But what I am going to do to start is just go over the surface. I'm a little bit worried about how the surface of these tiles is drying out. It's very thin, so we're just going to go over it lightly with the sponge and just get it all off. I'm going to try not to run over the cracks for now, because the water, there's enough water in the sponge that it may wet it up and pull it back out, so we'll see. So we just want to rub lightly over until we get that sort of damp residue. That's what you'll see drying up on the surface of the tile once we're done. Brush that across there. Oops, sorry. Brush that across there. Come up to the edge. That's lovely. So it's going to be a bit of a slow process, so I'm not going to film it all. But all I'm going to do for now is just work around all the tiles. You can see on this one, some of it's gone off and it's not coming off quite as quickly as I would have liked. Just got to be a bit careful not to get too much water out of this sponge, because it'll soak into the grout joints and give them a bit of trouble. So we're just going to rub that over lightly, and then what I might do is just leave that for a minute or two and go on to the next tile, and that will leave this grout then. It'll get a little bit wet, hopefully. There we are, you can see it starting to come off now. And then obviously where it won't, what we're going to do then is we can jump in with one of these pads when it's a little bit rough and just come up to the corners, and then we'll spread that around. So really the secret of it is having the right tools, really, and a little bit of enthusiasm. So we'll go over this one now as well. It's a funny thing with all this tile, this particular tile, I remember when laying it last week, it was it's a travertine tile, but in all honesty it looks a lot more like a limestone, that one does, but the way the surface is, it's like a lot shinier. Anyway, I probably wouldn't usually tile it off just quite this soon, but for the sake of this video I'm gonna buff over it. There we go. Well, that's essentially how we're going to clean all the tiles up. If you look down here now, you can see some of the water has dropped onto the surface of the grout, and that's not bad, but that's what we've got to try and avoid. You can see it all goes like bubbly, and what we don't want then is the grout pulling back out of the joints. So I'm going to go around it all now, like I'm doing here, cleaning up the surface of the tiles, and then we're going to give it, if I look at things, it's been another half an hour yet, and then we'll go over it then lightly with a sponge and just clean up all the edges of the joints, and we'll have it looking like this then. Right, well, I'm not going to carry on, but I'll probably do a third video just to show you all the floor done. It's about 25 square meters in total, so we did a fair bit. We just fitted a new kitchen and whatnot, and the tiles go right the way through the extension of the conservatory, right the way through the kitchen. So it's a really nice job. It's looking really good, but we've got to get it graded up. I'm going to have to crack on, and I can't do that holding this phone the whole time. So hopefully this gives you an indication on how you should be going about grouting your travertine tiles. you wouldn't need to do this necessarily on a standard tile because the surface won't be absorbing the grout and you would just wipe it straight off. And you do tend to have slightly bigger grout gaps on these tiles just because of the nature of setting them out. The way they're cut, you have to space them a bit to allow the squares to fit in, because a square and a big square and a little square would be the exact same width as when you join the other two up, and you wouldn't have room for the grout joint in that case. You've got to push that out, which then makes the next joint bigger and so on. I'm off on a tangent again, but because of the thickness of the grout joints, they're just going to take a bit longer to dry up. It's all looking good though. Look out for the third video, the completed floor, and you can see how it all came on, but you can see how to go about cleaning and buffing the grout out of those joints from what I've just done. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Feel free to comment, and hopefully I'll see you on the third video. I've been Big Pouse. Ciao for now.